The average is irrelevant.
The average is not irrelevant, because if it was irrelevant, it would not be the average, and this is a perfect example of a Mormon who doesn't understand information. And anyone that knows anything about basic statistics would understand that this argument is utterly and completely stupid. Come on, just look at a graph, dude. Over 2/3 of the population falls within one standard deviation of the average. That is not an irrelevant number. But if you want to talk about acceptance, you're still lying to yourself, because a 14-year-old girl marrying a 37-year-old man was not a commonly accepted practice even in the mid-1800s, and that action is one of the factors that led to Joseph Smith's eventual death. So why don't you stop making excuses for this false prophet and start acting like a man and an intellectually honest adult?
I'm not here to respond to this exchange that these two had at the beginning of the video. I'm just responding to the heading of this kid's video and some of his remarks regarding Joseph Smith and his marriage to the 14-year-old Helen Mar Kimball. It breaks my heart to see people who were brought up in the church and who served missions dive into church history and find things like this and have it be one of the pivotal reasons why they abandon their faith and their trust in the prophet Joseph Smith and his calling and the restored gospel. It also breaks my heart to see people who have already become disillusioned dive into church history and find things like this and use it as confirmation bias to justify where they're at in relationship with the church and Joseph Smith and the restored gospel. The reason that this breaks my heart is because they don't dive deeply into church history to understand the context and nuance, and especially the chronology of Joseph Smith's polygamy. They learn this one fact and they find that what everybody says about Joseph Smith is that he had eyes for this 14-year-old girl as a 37-year-old man, and he went to her home and whisked her away and married her so that he could have his way with her and satisfy the desires of his flesh with her. That's the furthest thing from the truth and from the facts that we have. Helen's father Heber was the one that proposed the idea that she be sealed to Joseph Smith, and the reason her father Heber proposed this idea to her was because the way he understood how sealings worked was that they were also a way to connect families eternally. And just like kingdoms in the past anciently would marry one child to another to unite the kingdoms on earth, Heber wanted to unite his family with Joseph Smith eternally. The sealing of Joseph Smith and Helen Mar Kimball was not a normal earthly marriage. There was no sexual relationship. It was simply a dynastic sealing to connect these families eternally. If you're someone who's come across these disgusting and false accusations against the prophet Joseph Smith, I'm pleading with you to dive deeply into Joseph Smith's polygamy and the church history. Don't just abandon your faith because of one fact that you've found out of context, or one fact that you've heard that has been integrated into a disgusting and twisted and false narrative about the prophet Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was a religiously sincere, honest, and worthy child and prophet of God. When you dive deeply into Joseph Smith's polygamy, you'll find no shenanigans. You'll find someone who has given a commandment and believed in that commandment, but was reluctant to obey and implement that commandment, and who was not given direct or explicit directions on how to implement and abide by that commandment. Joseph's heart was one that was after the Lord. It wasn't Joseph's libido that was driving what he was doing. It was his obedience to the Lord and his heart and his willingness to obey the commandments of God. Joseph Smith was a good man, and you can trust that.